Hey, everybody, you are watching and listening to the We Are Rising podcast. This is your host, Andrew Benjamin. I got two guests with me. I can't believe it. Two guests from beyond the grave. Well, not really beyond the grave, but returning guests, CJ and Jack Wannen sorry, what's your thing again, Jack? I'm so sorry.
Knockdown News, yes.
Knockdown News, yes. It's been a
Among
while.
other places.
And CJ, Sogokaku, how you doing? Both of you fine gentlemen.
I'm getting over COVID, so I'll try not to cough off the listeners' ears, and we'll have my finger on the cough button throughout the entire podcast.
Yeah. What's the button?
Button. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's good to be back. I'm recovering from COVID as well, a little more removed from it than CJ, so I still have my finger on the cough button as well. But I'm looking forward to this.
Okay, why is everybody getting COVID? Is it COVID season or something going on? Did you guys just come into the contact with the wrong people, or go to like a wrestling show or something?
I live in a city of like 9 million people.
I work in retail, so I come into contact with everybody.
Oh God, retail. Okay, gotcha. But yeah, we're here to finally talk the final portion of Rizin 49 Decade. Post intermission stuff. Before we go on, though, I'll start with you, Jack. Any thoughts on the fights or anything that happened before intermission and below?
Well, I mean, it was a pretty stacked show altogether, and it's hard to pick out just a few moments, even if we're just saying like not the top 5 fights on the card. This was a real marathon of a show. I thought that the sort of Mikuru Asakura versus Ren Hiromoto thing, I wasn't really huge on that, to be honest with you, after it finished up. There was just something about it that the fights were okay, but the team aspect to it didn't really sell me on it. Mikuru seemed kind of distant from his team, and by the time the last fight was happening, Ren actually wasn't even at ringside. So by the end of that, I thought that concept-wise was a bit of a flop. But there were so many great moments earlier on the show. I thought, really, if you could have like one huge moment to discuss on the undercard, I think it would be Kazushi Sakuraba's son, Taisei Sakuraba, having just an electric debut against Yusuke Yachi. This was the best debut you could possibly have for someone. Make such a huge stage, a really experienced opponent who everyone's familiar with, and just the performance he had, it was everything perfect for him there. That was the highlight of the undercard, but like I said, that's not to downplay all the other great things that happened earlier in the evening.
Gotcha. And I gotta ask your thoughts on Cena versus Ampo.
Well, it was just a masterpiece, really. It was the worst thing in the world in the best way possible. That last round where they started going, well, if you're going to break the rules, I'm going to break the rules. And the referee, unfortunately, becoming a combat sports fighter for a moment. Yeah. It was, the first few rounds were pretty lethargic and not very interesting, with Cena really just taking punches. But I think it was all worth the wait for that final round.
And you, CJ?
Yeah, I'll agree with Jack. I thought that the Ren versus Mikuru portion was kind of weird, because Mikuru's portion made sense to me, because he like legitimately has like breaking down, and he has his own gym, so he has like connections to fighters. Whereas it just seemed like Ren just found people that he could find to meet the weight class requirements. I'm like, what connections do any of these? What connection does Hiroaki Suzuki have to Ren? I don't get any of this, but and I will also agree. I really liked the VTR. I really liked the homage to Sakuraba with his son riding the bicycle, and the whole like 10th birthday angle. And could you ask for a better promotional debut? I thought them matching him against Gachi was kind of crazy, but he rose to the occasion, and that was a crazy finish. But I will urge a little bit of caution, because someone else was also on the card, and that's Kota Miura, who also had a kind of crazy pro debut with a famous father, and we're seeing what's happening to him now. So the ball's in Sakuraba's court to make sure he evolves, he keeps growing as a fighter, but he's got the name, he's got all the potential, so I'm excited to see where that goes. And I just have a random little fact I would like to say before we move on. Did you look at the glove sales for the event?
You mean
the auctions?
Oh no, I didn't. No.
Well, they auctioned off all of the gloves, amongst other things. And the highest was Horiguchi's. His were number 1. Number 2 was actually somebody from the Ren versus Mikuru part of the card. Yuta's gloves were the second highest price. They're only $1,000 less than Horiguchi's.
Okay.
And then third was Shadi, which makes sense. That guy's going to be a destroyer. And then after that was Chihiro Suzuki, and then Izawa. I mean, I always like to bring those things up because it kind of shows you where the popularity is, where the demand, who's going after what. So it's kind of interesting to see where the fighters stand in that regard. So I thought it'd be a fun fact to bring up because I know not a lot of foreign fans especially know about the auctions.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it'd be a little fun result to talk about.
So would you say that says about if Chihiro? You said that Chihiro was number 4. Then I think you said, right?
He is clearly more popular than Kleber Koike. Kleber Koike is kind of like Satoshi Light. Like he's so closely associated with Satoshi Souza, but Satoshi Souza has so much charisma that it just kind of buries Kleber underneath that. And Chihiro Suzuki, he's got a lot of things going for him. He's Japanese. He speaks Japanese, has exciting knockouts. He's an up-and-coming guy, and he's done a lot to generate some fans. And for some reason, I just don't think Koike really has the it factor that you would say with the Japanese fan base.
I think the interesting thing is that I always find it funny that Kleber at the press conference always has that guy with him who I'm assuming is his translator. But I've never seen him actually translate for him. It's kind of like, you ever watch the South Park, the Marlon Brando guy who has a little That's what I always think whenever I see Kleber with that guy.
If you look at the articles, it kind of mentions that Kleber said he was using a translator for most of that. He was using a Portuguese translator, so that must have been who that was. But most of the articles indicate that he was using a translator.
But most of all, I mean, you guys can't ignore that Sean O'Malley, UFC star Sean O'Malley was this must have been, yes.
I was negative on Sean O'Malley being there. And I spoke to some people in the media section who pretty much said Sean O'Malley was there to do commentary for the Ryan Garcia fight, and all of the plans were kind of made. And so when that fight fell through, they just brought him over anyway because the plans were already there. I thought it was kind of stupid. I went to the Rising Fan Expo. People were there to see Sean O'Malley. They were not there to see the weigh-ins. They were not there to do any of the activities. They were there to see Sean O'Malley. He was very popular. He drew a ton of fans. He had a fan event where to take a picture with him was like $300, and to get a signed glove from him was like $2,000 and sold out. Like, people loved him. He's got a loud personality, and it worked. I didn't think it would work, but it worked.
Well, I'm just only bringing it up because the misinformation or outright lie that he said he wants to fight in Rizin.
Oh yeah, you listen to the actual interview. It's just, I would love to fight in Japan one day, but I plan to spend my entire career in the UFC. So if the UFC goes to Japan, I'd like to fight there. Pretty much.
I know, Jack. You would never write it like that. You'd write it as he actually said it. You would not sub in Rizin for Japan, which is apparently what a lot of MMA writers do now.
You got that right. One thing I was curious, and I wanted to pick your guys' brains about here, is just the idea that the almost we had a lot of legitimate fighters on that Black Rose versus Breaking Down part of the lineup, but if there was a part of the show that was the most almost influenced by that sort of influencer type online style of fighting, it was that. I think the thing that's really curious to me is the fact that that was at the very start of the show and not higher up in the lineup as we've seen before. Most notably, coming up at the Tokyo Dome, the Ren Hiromoto Mikuro Asakura rematch. Obviously, two real fighters, but people very influenced by that crowd, and them headlining a show last year that was Rizin's biggest show of the year. What did you guys think about them sort of having a more business-oriented main event and top part of the card versus having those fights early in the evening?
Oh, maybe CJ, you could answer. Maybe they gave her. I don't know if you heard Mara. If you gave a reason why that was at the beginning. or something like that?
The original plan in the very beginning, this wasn't Sakibara's plan. It's like Sasahara's plan. I think that's his name. Was
2 a.m. Bellator show.
Yeah, they wanted to do like the 24-hour long event where they're going to do like the Bellator PFL card starting at 2 a.m. But I think that fell apart almost immediately because Bellator just immediately said they can't do that time slot. That's crazy. But,
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, but I think they wanted to I think they wanted people at the event all day. They're trying because it was the 10th. They're making this like the 10th anniversary card, a decade. So I think they're trying to make a whole event out of it. And I bet, I'm not going to guarantee, but I bet if the Ryan Garcia fight hadn't fallen through, they would have tried to sell a ticket to each one of those events. They would have split it into separate events and tried to sell double tickets, which is why they were giving each one its own name. But the problem is this card was victim to some falling apart kind of, and they weren't able to kind of do that. But I think that's probably what would have happened.
Now, would the breaking down versus Mikuru thing, would that still happen if it wasn't for the Ryan Garcia fight? Like, or do you think this was something they sort of cobbled together in the 11th hour?
It's hard to say, but I think it would have always been there just because they wanted to do the 24-hour of all events. But it might very well have been something to cobble together because as exciting as this card was, and as there was good matchmaking on it, the excitement for Sean O'Malley at the Fan Expo, and the fact that after Horiguchi, the second highest selling gloves were Yuta from the breaking down portion of the card, kind of tells me that this card was lacking real star power that would attract like the non-hardcore fight fan Japanese fan base. It didn't have like a Mikuru Asakura. It didn't have a Kai Asakura. It didn't have Tenshin, something like that. So by putting this Ren versus Mikuru event together, it did put two really popular names and attach them to the event, which I think they're probably hoping would help sell tickets.
I think
they were still selling tickets day of. This event did not sell out. They were selling tickets day of at the venue.
So I think that portion was at least last minute. If they were planning it, they I don't know why they did it last minute because I know a bunch of the fighters who fought did not cut weight, like Sho Patrick Usami, obviously Anpo didn't cut weight, and I think when the
Anpo fight was clearly very last minute.
Oh yeah. So maybe it's possible that was last minute, but maybe the other stuff wasn't. If you understand, yeah. If they were planning to do those other fights, but then obviously Anpo Cena exception. Before we get into the fights, Jay Krish has a question. How was Rizin 2024? He says that on Focus Fights yesterday, Todd and he agreed that 2025 is a make or break year for Rizin. I wouldn't say make or break, but I think. Sorry, CJ, go ahead.
I think the toughest year in Rizin's history was the first year of COVID.
Yeah,
when they lost the TV contracts, and now that they have a tried and true pay-per-view system going, I think they're much more stable financially than they've ever been. And this Ren versus Mikuru fight that they have planned for the Tokyo Dome is going to make them huge money. I don't see how that event doesn't sell out, especially with all the drama associated with it. So I think Rizin is in a very secure position. I just think the problem they're facing is that, as I said, Mikuru was hinting at retirement with the last Ren fight. Kai is in the UFC now. Tenshin is no longer in Rizin. Rizin has not been able to make a superstar post Fuji TV contract like they did before. But there are potential stars like Sakuraba's son, people like that, or other people they're always searching for. If one of those people can rise up, that'd be huge, especially with Horiguchi essentially chomping at the bit to leave Rizin and go to the UFC. I think they need to find new stars, but I don't think it's a make or break year for them.
I think that if anything, this year was a really important sort of year for them. And the way I think about that is This was, I mean, we've seen for years Rizin bleeding talent, which is just inevitable for a promotion which is in the MMA ecosystem with UFC at the top, that people are going to get plucked from the roster. And on top of that, someone like Tenshin's going to leave as well. So I think this was a big year for them, because this was a year where new stars needed to be made. And I think that the way that Ren Hiromoto has over the past couple of years been able to elevate him into that discussion of those sort of bigger, louder personalities in Rizin. Keep in mind, when he moved to MMA initially, he was a bit of a flop at first. He was really having trouble getting his MMA career off the ground. And I think it was this rivalry with Mikuru Asakura, which finally started in 2024, that was obviously a huge draw for Rizin and has been a huge success. And you have someone in Ren who, even if Mikuru does retire, which he, let's be clear, has threatened to do so maybe 20, 30 times over the past few years, you do have this other guy who has a win over Mikuru and does have some star power, either as a superstar or some sort of anti-hero in some sense. I think I would agree. They're in a pretty secure position. Obviously, Rizin has to have a conveyor belt of stars being made, because as one star is made, one star is taken. And that's been the case for years now, that someone who rises to the top of the promotion, or even just comes close to the top of the promotion, gets taken away from them. So I think they have to be quick on their feet to create new stars, but I think they've shown over the past few years that they can definitely do that.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how 2025 goes. But let's get into the card we talked a little bit about before. Main event, new champ, Kleber Koike beating Chihiro. I think a fantastic fight. A fucking great fight. One of the best of the year for any promotion. Jack, got it. Well, first of all, did you watch this? Did you watch this part live, or were you smart and decided to sleep and watch the next day?
This was the first time I watched it not live, and
no, you're smart.
I have to tell you, I mean, I feel like every single time I stay up for New Year's Eve, by the end of it, I tell myself I'm never going to do this again. And this was the first year where I didn't have that experience. And to be honest, I have no regrets.
Smart. But what did you think of this main event and our new champ?
I mean, it was just the perfect story, the way this fight went. It was like right out of a movie. The fact that this fight crossed past the midnight mark and it was the fight that kicked off 2025. It was dramatic. It was incredibly close. There was just everything that you would want out of a fight. So I don't think it's a stretch to say that it was one of the better fights of the year. I guess maybe a semantics thing is
do we count it as 2025?
I was just about to ask. Does it qualify for both 2024 and 2025, or can only the final round be counted as a 2025 fight of the year?
Oh no, no, I didn't even think about that. Oh.
I mean, we've run into a huge mess here that someone's gonna have to pick.
For posterity's sake, let's just say we count when the show starts.
Okay, we'll do that. I agree with the decision here that the Koike won. I think that I totally understand why people would sway the other way. I guess that what's surprising to me is that I was almost surprised that we didn't see a judge go the other way with this, because it was a really close fight and there was a lot to think about here in this matchup. Again, I do agree with the decision, but it was a close one.
I didn't think it was close at all. I mean, TJ, did you think it was close at all?
When I was watching it, I think the first and second round were very close, but with the rising scoring system, I think the third round in this fight in particular was kind of the make it or break it for both fighters. That if either fighter had a very strong third round, it would wipe out kind of everything that happened in the previous rounds. And while Suzuki did land that nice elbow in the third round that busted Kleber open, you cannot deny that Kleber got Suzuki down, went for numerous submission attempts, got some good ground and pound, got the full mount. And some of the submission attempts look pretty tight. When you look at the judge scoring, I mean, I see two of the judges gave 50 damage points to Kleber. And as we've seen in the past, they're pretty stingy at those damage points. So at least according to those judges, they must have thought those submissions looked pretty good. And I think the first 2 rounds are very close, but I think when you look at the scoring system, that final round, Kleber did a lot of work, and I think that was enough to push it for him.
If I can just clarify, like I do totally agree with the decision. I guess the thing that surprised me is that like in those moments where you have that really striking visual of a cut like that, that does sway judges sometimes, right. And that was the type of thing where I was surprised. Like I was surprised that someone didn't appeal to someone in a way that it sometimes does. Like I think that the judges totally got it right. However, this was I think that it's hard to deny that this was a competitive fight and one where a judge could have gone it the other way.
I think it was very competitive. I think that the Rising scoring system is incredibly subjective, and it can lead to kind of weird decisions. But I think historically, it's kind of shown that if you're really dominant in the grappling, it tends to like slide your way because that gives you the aggressiveness and that generalship.
Yeah,
the generalship. So
that's why I don't think it was that close, because if ring control or generalship was all, I think, Kleber, because he was the one who was pushing forward. He was the one attempting submissions. In terms of damage, I think definitely fair to say that Chihiro's the one who definitely did more damage. But in terms of overall attempts to finish and overall control, I think that's why Kleber is the one. That's why it didn't go.
Yeah,
it didn't go to a split decision. That you might think. I think would render a split decision.
Based off their scoring, Suzuki needed to do a lot of damage on the feet to undo the aggression and generalship of Koike. And by a lot of damage, we've seen in the scoring, I mean, he had to drop him, almost knock him out. Like, they want you to really hurt the guy.
I was going to say this, that he would have to look like Kubo by the end of the fight to maybe get it to his thing. But I just want to also say, can we give Kleber so much like credit, because this is a guy who can like maybe just lay on you for the entire round, but this guy is always hunting for a submission. This guy does not stop. He's like
no. He and Satoshi are both very commendable for always like choosing submission over position, and they really go after it. And Kleber's been working on his striking, and he's been going to Thailand and training, going to America and training. And I mean, I also want to give credit to Chihiro. I mean, the first time they fought, he got submitted in the first round. I mean, he lasted a long time, survived mean submission attempts from a dangerous guy.
I think he even went try this for the same armbar attempt. And I think Chihiro was able to defend it. So yeah, definitely going Chihiro. Next title challenger, will it hopefully be Shaydullaev, CJ, or is Shaydullaev off the UFC?
I saw some Japanese articles were like saying they want him to fight. What's the guy's name? Dotsek. What's the guy's name?
Dotbeck?
Fought on the what?
Dotbeck.
Yeah.
I don't want to see that fight. I would rather just see. I'm gonna call him Shoddy. I just want to see him fight Kleber immediately, because that's the fight that makes the most sense to me. I know in the post-fight interview, Kleber was mentioning fighting Vugar Karamov, but I know he's coming off of a loss at a higher weight division. I know he went up in lightweight to fight Satoshi, but he's coming off a loss. Let him get a win. Everyone's talking about Shoddy. Shoddy's terrifying. If he still stays in Rising, despite signing with like the same management company that has Conor McGregor, but if he still stays in Rising, he absolutely deserves a title shot.
But you see, that's the one thing, is that if Paradigm, and this is what I think, that Paradigm, he's either going directly to UFC, or Paradigm's going to see this as like, okay, let's get him one title shot, he wins, and that increases his stock for a UFC contract. It's kind of like, oh god.
Well, then
I don't like. I kind of like
UFC Rising can put a champion clause in the contract or something.
Yeah, but we know that Rising's contracts are not. They won't. They'll let, if you ask to go UFC, they'll let you.
I prefer not to.
I don't really see winning a Rizin title as like upping your stock in the UFC. Like if you have the resume that he already has, like they'll sign you. Like you don't need anything more than that. They've signed people off less.
Oh yeah,
He doesn't need it. Yeah, I think Jack's completely right. He doesn't need it. If he wanted to go to the UFC, he could get in the UFC.
But also,
But
I don't feel you sign a paradigm to have a 3-fight to fight more in Rizin. That's at least kind of
well,
like
he did mention though wanting to fight Kleber for the title several times on social media and in his interview.
but he said that before I think he got signed. I think
No, he signed it after. He said it after, I
okay.
believe.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But I mean, that's the fight I want. I don't want to think about behind the scene politics that if he wins, he flees the UFC. Because you can say that about half the fighters on the roster, almost, especially at heavyweight. So I just want. He's such a monster in the room.
Yeah,
that he deserves it. I mean, the Kubo fight almost didn't make sense to me. It's like, why are you putting this guy against Kubo? But now that he's done like the weird freak show fight, this guy absolutely deserves to fight Koike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got
yeah, that's the obvious fight to make, and I think that the only thing stopping it is that sort of business side of the sport. If he stays or if he goes, it's other than that a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So what about Mr. Chihiro? What will be next for him? What do you think will be a? I was just gonna say just do him versus Kubo. I thought that's kind of like a little. That should be fair because neither of them are really grapplers. That could be a fun scrap, you know.
Chihiro's kind of a crazy. I think that's a dangerous fight to make though, because Chihiro, despite all odds, beat all these like people they put him against. And what for him terrible matchups, but he somehow kept winning them, and he like through sheer force of will became kind of a star. Kubo is really good at what Suzuki is good at. Like I don't know if I would want to put him in with a former K1 champion. Like
they're also just doing this whole kickboxing MMA thing, kind of. So
I mean, losing to Koike does nothing to Chihiro's stock. Losing to Kubo does damage his stock. So.
Okay.
I think that's kind of a risky matchup for him.
Yeah, losing to Koike, it was like, okay, well, he lost on the ground to a grappler. Yeah. It's like kind of like, well, yeah, we kind of saw that coming, right? Where you lose to a striker, it's like, oh, well, that's kind of your wheelhouse.
Well, anybody who you put him up against, Jack?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think it would be good to give him a bounce back win. I think Rizin knows that he's a star. His run over the past year or so was pretty big. It would have been probably bigger if he got that Pacquiao exhibition match, right? I would give him someone reliable. What you think he could rebound against?
He may have been the one facing Garcia, for all we know, at this main event.
I don't think any. I'm gonna go out on a limb and think that that's just he's not gonna face anyone.
Gotcha.
Well, I almost would rather see Chihiro fight like Topik. I mean, didn't Topik lose to Mikuru a while back?
That was in the dark ages, but yes, he did.
Yeah, I want to see. I mean, if Mikuru can beat him, Chihiro can beat him.
Well, here's the Topik Mikuru does not beat Topik now at all. But Mikuru gets destroyed by him, in my opinion.
How dare you? Kana Asakura's brother is one of the best fighters on the planet.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Well, you're talking about Kai? Or are you talking about Mikuru? Oh, okay.
I'm joking, being sarcastic.
I know. So main event. Kyoji Horiguchi gets another win, but he did get rocked a few times. So, CJ, I want to ask your thoughts on this fight.
Kind of a history nerd, and this fight to me just like screams Pyrrhic victory. Because sure, he defeated Zulu. He defeated Zulu. But his entire objective in taking this fight was to have a really impressive win so that he could go off into the sunset and go into the UFC. And getting stunned by Zulu in round 1 and round 2 is not going to get him into the UFC. Because I think the UFC holds a grudge that he did not re-sign with them after the Mighty Mouse loss and he went to Rizin. And they already have Kai Asakura, they have Taira, and they have Rei Tsuraya, all who fight at flyweight. So I think they're kind of like, why do we need a 34-year-old fighter who's getting essentially dropped in every fight he has now? Like, he still wins, but I mean, I was talking to my wife about it. Ogikubo dropped him. Kintaro dropped him. Zulu stunned him and dropped him. Like, he's taking damage and not taking punches as well as he used to. And so even though he's only like 33 or 34, the guy's got like Minotauro Nogueira-esque miles on his system. And I just don't think the UFC is interested. And I think that it's kind of like Zulu is a good fighter, but the problem is like people don't know he's a good fighter. So when they see him not just absolutely smash him, I think it's not going to get him the results he wants.
Jack, your thoughts?
Yeah, going into this fight, like CJ said, all the talk was this is like almost the job interview for Kyoji rejoining the UFC. And I think he didn't pass. He had an amazing performance. I think that both him and Zulu were incredibly competitive here. And I do think you have to give a lot of credit to Zulu for making this the fight that it was and really dragging it out of Horiguchi to go into this 3-round battle with him. But I think that if Kyoji was going to come back to the UFC, they probably would want him at a high level, sort of throwing him into the fire per se. And I think this fight showed that if you did that to him in the UFC, he'd probably just lose. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having mileage. I don't think this is some indictment on his skills or saying that he's a bad fighter. I just think that every fighter reaches this point in their career. Some reach it much quicker than others. I think he's there. And I think that the best thing for Horiguchi would probably to be stick around and rise and keep this title run going. Listen, if he joins the UFC, I won't be mad about that. But I just think that you can't. I don't know how anyone would watch this fight and go, "Yeah, we should put him against the best in the world in this weight class." I just didn't see that.
I also and I said this way back on City Life Project. Each shows just that even like UFC, they pick and choose who they bring back after, like, if somebody leaves. They don't just, this isn't, not everybody gets like, oh, go win some 3 fights somewhere else and we'll call you back. It's much more rare than like the norm.
Their kind of final words to him were, "You're not popular in the US. You don't move the needle. Good luck."
But even even so, but it's so much more rare for somebody who I would even say, even if you are being at Horiguchi's level, makes it even harder for you to be signed than somebody who's kind of like, to this day I still like put it this way, Thales like this Brazilian guy who had one of the worst fights ever, title fights against Anderson Silva way back, got re-signed. And you would think why that guy got re-signed, and it's because you can still do something with somebody who's like a B, not B, but like I would say B level player, as opposed to somebody like Horiguchi where it's like, I mean, like, he's at the top, so okay. Anything else? No, not really. Yeah.
Another factor that I would tend to focus on is I don't think the UFC is really in the business of bringing over people to finish their careers. Like, Horiguchi's clearly not in his prime. He's clearly on the downward go. His skills are still there. I just think his chin is fading.
That's a good point.
I do find it interesting, though, how much the narrative recently was that he's like secretly one of the best flyweights in the world. Like, I feel like there was a lot of people saying stuff like that.
Well, his coach, Mike Brown, saying it like in every interview he goes to.
Yeah. It's just also.
Plus, I mean,
sorry, CJ.
Sakakibara is also saying like, "Oh, I don't want him to go to the UFC right away. I want him to take part in the flyweight Grand Prix we're doing this summer." And so, if that's the case, that means that unlike Kai, where like Sakakibara like flew out to Vegas to like meet with Dana White and like get it done, Sakakibara also wants Horiguchi to kind of stay around a little longer. And even Sakakibara said he didn't think the performance was impressive enough to get the attention of Dana White or Hunter over at the UFC.
Yeah.
And that Horiguchi is going to need to get some good wins in the flyweight Grand Prix if he wants to get their attention.
Yeah, actually. And so Jay Krish brings up that flyweight Grand Prix. Do we see it this year, CJ? Finally?
That's what he's saying. just like I've already said, so we'll see.
I don't know.
It makes sense because if you look at this event in particular, there were a ton of flyweights on the card. Like they have the formations of the tournament. They just need to make the matches. Especially if Horiguchi's around. I mean, it would be a waste not to do it while he's there.
I feel like it becomes really obvious when Rizin's like really gearing up for a tournament.
Yeah,
and that's kind of been showing.
I feel like we've been talking about Flyweight Grand Prix for like. I feel like we've been talking about. It's almost come a million points.
They've clearly been waiting for Horiguchi, and Bellator was only willing to give them Horiguchi when they didn't want to use Horiguchi for something. But now that they have full access to Horiguchi, I think that it's much more plausible that they can do a flyweight tournament.
Gotcha. And so also Chris asked, we'll talk about Zulu. I guess we'll just talk about him briefly. Is Zulu Rizin worthy after going 1-1? Jack, what do you think? Would you like to see Zulu back?
Absolutely. I mean, he gave the champion not only an exciting fight, but a competitive one. Exciting, you can have an exciting fight, but get your ass beat. But he had an exciting fight, and he had moments where it's like, this guy's really giving it to the champion. I think why not?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely Rizin worthy. I mean, he stunned Horiguchi, dropped him, and he took him down. He's a young guy. He has a cool entrance. I mean, what else do I want?
Yeah, no, he was DDP in his corner? I couldn't tell if DDP was in his corner. I couldn't tell either, no. Okay. So yeah,
I feel like that would have went around social media if that was the case.
I feel like that too. They would have done the Bellator Khabib cam. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Had Khabib on the corner, whatever.
The Sarah cam.
So CJ, I always like to ask you this before we talk about Satoshi. Did you pick Satoshi to win this fight, or did you not?
Man, my track record, I just stopped resisting it. I'm like, Satoshi's just always going to win.
Yeah.
Especially in this fight where Vugar was going up. But I'm like, Satoshi he's defied all the odds. He's somehow learned how to strike despite his advanced age. And he's been amazing. And
so did you pick him? Did you finally pick him to win and he won this time?
I mean,
you didn't pick him? You thought
I just don't think I picked. I didn't make picks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was laying in bed like a Civil War hospital, like in the middle of a fever dream while these fights were happening.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Jack, what could be said about Satoshi? This guy just defied the odds.
He's a beast, man. Yeah. I think that he has a very good case, and I want to hear what you guys think. I think he has a very good case of being like a Rizin Fighter of the Year. When you talk about the performance he had here, the fact that he defended his title against Luis Gustavo, who was on a very long winning streak and was a very scary striker earlier this year. And on top of that he had another win against Keitaro Nakamura, who isn't a championship level fighter, but is an experienced guy. He beat all three guys in the first round. When it comes to Rizin fighters, I don't think anyone comes close to the resume that he had. And I think it only adds narrative-wise the fact that he had a really rough 2022 and 2023, and that this is a year where he really bounced back from that.
That's the thing that's so surprising, is that somebody at his age, somebody with his skill level, they just tend to just, I guess, plateau, or even he started off wishy-washy, and he's gotten better, which is so rare. I feel, especially at that weight class as well. I think 155 weight class.
I just think he's confident, has grown exponentially. Early on in his career, it's like very obvious that striking like freaked him out.
Yeah,
and he didn't like to hit, something that his brother still suffers from. And now that he seems much more comfortable striking, it's just opened up his grappling game even more.
He was going back and forth in this fight early on. He was willing to trade on the feet, which is like this sort of wild thing to imagine. Like if you went back a few years ago and told yourself that you'd be seeing this, you'd be like, I don't believe you. You know.
I think the scary thing is,
Vugar's like biggest weapon in Rising so far has just been like his physicality. Like Japanese fighters especially have just not been able to handle like his wrestling and physical power. And him moving up in weight class, I think, sapped him a lot of that, of what like was one of his major strengths. So I'd like to see him drop back down, but
I think that's one of the scary things about Satoshi is that now that he can strike, if he doesn't want to strike, he doesn't have to. He's that good. He's that good in the ground. That's like, and I think that's what he decided in this fight. I think he thought that Vugar may have been the more powerful striker, so it's just like, I'm just gonna go to the ground this guy.
Well, it's kind of like I'm glad he didn't make the mistake that like Damian Maia made, where a lot of those Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys get like obsessed with striking. But then Damian Maia like course corrected and was like, now that I know about striking, I can use it to set up my grappling.
Yeah.
Which Satoshi kind of skipped that middle, get knocked out a bunch of times, step, and just like, okay, now I can strike with people. And now which if people are so terrified of you as a grappler, it's like almost like a bonus to your striking because they're not looking to defend against it. It's like when Khabib dropped Conor McGregor.
You said that Vugar wants Kleber, or no? You said did Kleber want Vugar next, or did Vugar say he wants Kleber next?
I think Kleber mentioned him in an interview as like a next possible opponent.
Do you see Vugar? I was gonna say,
makes no sense to me.
Yeah. Do you see Vugar staying at lightweight, or do you think he should go back to featherweight?
Absolutely should drop back down. I think the issue was he didn't want to wait around, and so he was supposed to fight Vugar. I mean, he's supposed to fight Chihiro Suzuki, but Chihiro Suzuki has like a million fights lined up in like all different rule sets, and so he was like, "I'm not going to wait around. I'll fight Satoshi," which, in hindsight, might have not been the best decision.
I want to ask: Do you think it was he didn't want to wait around, or do you think that Rizin was like, here's a match we can make at lightweight? Because I feel like there are like lightweight certainly is a division, but like there aren't endless options there. So it would totally make sense to me if they approached him with this fight.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know what happened.
I think I heard that Vugar was told, hey, you can't fight for a title till next year or so, but we can offer you the lightweight because if you think about it, there was nobody.
So Kleber kind of said that Vugar didn't want to wait around for a title shot, so he took this fight. So that's probably what Andrew's probably right. What they said was Suzuki's booked up till like 2027. So if you want to fight for a title, maybe you should fight the lightweight.
Imagine how much more of a clusterfuck this would have been if Garcia Chihiro had happened. Oh man, this would have been just. That's why I think would have been the original main boxing portion. I think.
Did I misremember? Did they say that the Ampo is now fighting Ryan Garcia in America?
That's what Ampo said, and Garcia I thought implied it, but that's what Ampo said. He said, and
there was a press release saying it got rescheduled, but like.
For April, I think it was, right? I think it was April, but his suspension ends in April. But I don't know about his injury. So
the second his suspension's over, he's going for a huge payday. He's not going to be fighting.
Oh yeah,
one of these things. Okay.
Oh yeah. So what do you think should be next for? Is there anybody next for Satoshi? I can't think of anybody besides.
That's the question, right?
I think the only person is maybe Spike Carlisle.
No.
Maybe AJ McKee.
You gotta bring someone over.
Maybe bring someone over. Maybe Kim Kyung-kyo coming off a win from Landmark.
He'd be a fun Rising representative for the Rising versus Korea card.
Yes, yeah. Oh, he's definitely got to be on there. Yeah.
There's a bunch of big Korean guys. They have a ton of light heavyweights and heavyweights.
I think it's like a forever issue for Rizin that their lightweight division isn't super built out. I mean, I think if you go back to like the lightweight Grand Prix they had a few years ago, it's just like you look at the roster and it becomes obvious how thin the lightweight division is. Even then, like so many guys were brought in, and then so many guys were like old timers being brought back just to like add an extra spot to the bracket. Like I think that's always been an issue for them, and especially is now. Like the way I was trying to find like someone who could fight for the title was I was just like going in order of each Rizin card and seeing like how many who was fighting a lightweight, and it's like, oh, there's like one lightweight fight on this card, and then like oh, there's like
more or less than welterweight. It was more or less.
Yeah, and then you go back 2 cards and it's like, oh, I already saw this person, so like you're kind of you have a small selection.
We have a question from AZ Ray Videos. Thank you for tuning in. He wants to know thoughts on Black Combat. Do you think that Rizin will expand to other countries? Could they require one FC roster if one goes under? So first question, Black Combat's amazing. I love their whole shtick. CJ King Greek. Jack, have you watched Black Combat before?
Yeah.
Oh, so
but I will put an asterisk. I don't know if I could stomach a Black Combat show in person, because apparently it's like one fight an hour, and the events last like 6 to 9 hours. So I don't know if I could do that.
Don't
But
they also
I do
show
like
those in movie theaters? I heard. Don't they show the Black Combat in movies?
the live events are incredibly long.
Okay, I like that they upload. They
Their
upload
social media game is amazing,
Oh, yeah.
and their use of YouTube is very good.
And they have subtitles on the VTR things and all that stuff. It's really good. I wait for I don't think I've ever watched a Black Combat show.
I would actually like to see Satoshi just have him fight some Black Combat lightweight guy in the Rising Korea show.
How about the gangster guy? Just have him face the gangster.
Godfather
guy.
Black. I will say, Black Combat did kind of score because they cleaned up a bunch of like Road FC guys and other promotions fell apart. They have really good fighters in Black Combat.
Also, I think you told me that or Oshima said that apparently like they get paid very well to come over there.
They're treated very well. I mean, there's a gym, they get all their food provided. They get treated very well.
Do you think that Rise will expand to other countries? I think they would like to. Will it happen?
As in like doing like a one-off show like or something like that.
I'm
still waiting for Rise in Hawaii.
Yeah. I will say I think they have aspirations just as much as K1 does when it comes to doing a show in New York. Let's put it.
I mean, let's just be honest. Like Rising Azerbaijan was filled with a bunch of local fighters, and they had the business connections to make it work. Rising Korea is going to be it's very close to Japan geographically. Flights will be cheap, and they'll have a full roster of Road FC and Black Combat guys that they can throw on the card. If they can go to a country where they can source a local pool of fighters to fill up the roster, I think they'll be interested in going to that country.
Yeah,
I think a big part of it is narrative. Like you can go to Korea because you have those connections and because you have some sort of like history of Korean fighters being in there. Like, but you can't just like suddenly like. For example, like they have connections in like Poland, for example, but Rizin doesn't really have any like active Polish fighters on the roster, so it would be kind of left field for them to just like suddenly go there. You know what I mean?
Well, also KSW is not just going to let them like sap their roster pool to hold an event.
Right. Yeah.
They've made their thoughts well known.
So like there's openings to do international stuff, but I think that they are going to be very selective of that.
As for the ONE FC roster, if ONE FC were to go under. They're only accepting the Japanese fighters. I would think. At least like
98% of ONE FC's roster has to be kickboxers at this point. I broke down their MMA events. Like they have entire events that have one MMA fight on them. It's like insane number of kickboxing fights they put on. But they'd only be interested in like Itsuki or Harata, Ryota, Sawada Chihiro.
I think
Akimoto.
Wada. Katsumitsu Wada, they would bring back. And,
they just want the Japanese fighters.
Yeah. Sorry, Jack, you were going to say something?
Yeah, there would be a lot of people they would selectively pick up. They wouldn't acquire the whole roster. Just logistically, it wouldn't work. But it would be interesting to see. I mean, when you think about, like, if the company were to go under, and this is a huge if, they just secured funding last year. If they were to go under, it would suck for a lot of people. For a lot of people, it would suck. There'd be a lot of free agents. But if there's any market that would have the most like free agency opportunities, it would be Japan, where people can go to Rizin, and there is still a ton of regional promotions that are willing to pick up these people.
Well, I mean, I think of ONE Championship, they actually have a very strong women's division. But the problem is all those women are closer to UFC weight classes than rising weight classes.
Yeah.
And UFC just loves the idea of going like deeper into the Chinese market and stuff like that. So I think a lot of those fighters would get swooped up by the UFC, especially people like Stamp Fairtex and things like that. I just don't think that Rising could compete financially. But they would be able to like play their cards and selectively pick fighters they really wanted to bring over.
So speaking of women, atomweight, Seika wins. No one cares. CJ. Do you have anything to say about this fight?
I hated the matchmaking. Her opponent was only there because she fought and beat Panchan Rena. It was very obvious what was going to happen, but when it happened, and afterward, Seika said that she's tired of fighting Japanese fighters. She made some dig at Rena for not being at the event because she was supposed to fight Rena. And then kind of said that she doesn't want to fight Rena because she doesn't think they're the same level anymore. And she just wants to like compete on the global stage. But she made comments like that, but I was just like, what is she? This isn't like 10 years ago, the women's atomweight division was like booming. Nowadays, Invicta is kind of like a Kansas City, Colorado promotion that's got a couple fighters, but one championship doesn't have atomweight. Bellator doesn't have atomweight. PFL doesn't have atomweight. UFC doesn't have atomweight. I don't know where they're thinking she's going to find these atomweight fighters outside of Japan. It's going to be interesting to see who they bring. My idea is I would like to, if she's not going to fight Rina and she's not going to fight Oshima for some reason, I would like to see them get Kaneko Murata and have Seika Izawa fight her at 52 kilograms in Rizin and see if she really is level for the world stage. Kaneko went. Kaneko was an Invicta champion. She fought in the UFC. If she thinks she's ready for that level of fighter, they can make it happen.
Any thoughts, Jack?
Yeah, this was a waste of time matchup. I think that Seika Izawa is obviously a big talent, and there's no point in having these types of fights. That we can all agree on. I think there's interesting matchups that you can make for her. I think that to add on to Invicta FC, they do have an atomweight champion right now in Alessandro Ferreira. So if that is something, I don't know what their connection is with Invicta FC right now. They did change ownership a couple of years back. I don't know if that can be made, but if it could be made, that would be a fun matchup. Rena fight would be good. I like CJ's idea, but just don't give her people who are like have these types of records. Like, what are we doing here?
What are we doing? I mean, go scoop up Jessica Penne, tell her to cut back down to atomweight, stop doing the steroids, get her over here, and have her fight. I mean, Jessica Penne beat Rena in shootboxing, was a legitimate atomweight champion. Like, there's people they could scrape up. The problem is that I don't think Invicta is going to be too keen to send their champion over. After the last time they did that, the champion got like knocked out in the first. Remember they sent their champion. They sent Jinyu Frey to Road FC, and then Ham Sohee knocked her out like the first round. So I think wait. She got signed to the GF. I will respond to this comment.
Yeah.
Penne got signed to the GFL, but I believe the way the GFL works is that someone actually has to like then sign you to your team.
Yeah.
So being signed to the GFL doesn't actually mean anything. You actually then be drafted, I think is what they're calling it.
Well, and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
I think what's the most embarrassing thing, or the thing I'm just so perplexed by, is that okay, so Reina got like the injury was like maybe like late November, early November, and I just wonder like how they came to the conclusion about this opponent, this Argentinian woman. Just like
no, they only picked her, I swear, because she beat Panchan Reina.
But like this Argentinian one must like have some easy way into Japan, or must have a Japanese. There must be some, because you would think that they would have
from the Panchan Reina fight, and B, Izawa might have been throwing a fit like, I'm not going to fight a legitimate fighter on such short notice. You need to bring me just a foreign bum that I can beat.
But you think that they would just get somebody also just like from Deep Jewels or something, just like I don't know. You said that Park was injured, I think, right? Didn't you say that? That Park.
Which one?
Oh, sorry, Siwoo Park. Siwoo Park.
Siwoo Park. Yeah, they're not going to make a third Siwoo Park fight on short notice.
Or just I don't know. Anybody?
I thought you were going to mention that one Park girl that was WMMA news scene knows, the girl that won like 3 fights this year.
Oh yeah, I know.
The Road FC show.
Oh yes, I know who you're talking about. Oh, I forgot her name, but yeah, okay.
No, there's a ton of fighters they could have found that would have made more sense, because especially with Korea right next door. Korea has always been like just like a breeding ground of the good women fighters.
And so yeah, could about Jinyu Frey maybe also back. Anyway, complete waste of time. Nothing to say. Let's get into an actual match. Yuki Motoya playing spoiler. Jack, how do you feel that Motoya has ruined Akimoto forever? He'll never return from this loss.
Yeah, I mean, I rewatched this this morning actually, just because I didn't really know what my takeaway was, because like there were moments on the feed where Akimoto looked good, and he's obviously still a strong prospect. But I just think this was a match where it's like it was just like too much too quick for him. And I think Rizin does like sort of throwing people into the fire and seeing what happens. You know, Taisei Sakuraba, for example. But like this just didn't work out. These things do happen. Like it is one loss, and that's not. I don't think it's a huge deal. Does it kind of suck? Yeah, that you had this what 18-year-old on New Year's Eve who has a flawless record and could really get this huge win. But I mean, he's gonna bounce back from this. I think it was just a little hopeful matchmaking.
TJ?
I will agree with everything Jack said, as usual. Rising has like two ways of bringing up stars. They either tend to go like the Sidario approach, where they baby you to the point where it's like detrimental to your career.
Yeah.
Or they go like the Sakuraba route, where it's like, oh, do you want to fight the former champion in your pro debut?
Or the Oto route.
Either or.
There's the Oto route, as well.
It's like Ursa Yamamoto. It's like, oh, how would you like to fight Kron Gracie? It's just like, it's like they're not very forgiving with their young stars. So that's up to the managers to kind of like put cool jets and some of that stuff. But I mean, Motoya's kind of made his entire rising career after ruining, like, this is what he does. He beat Kentaro, Yamaniha, Ota, Kuramoto. This is just what he does. He's in rising to just like show these young whippersnappers that they aren't at the level yet. And he's a very savvy veteran. This is all very painful for me to say. He's a very savvy veteran. He can do it. He can do a little bit of everything. And hopefully Akimoto learns from this. But now we get to watch Motoya versus Naoki Inoue too. So
do you look forward to that? March. Do you look forward to that?
I will look forward to it if the result is similar to the first time.
How about you, Jack? Do you look forward to that title fight?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a few years since it's been 5 years since they last fought. Oh my god. So yeah, I'm not against it, and I mean he earned it. I think it's a good match.
It will be interesting because when he first fought Naoki kind of had like this aura of invincibility. He was like this monster that trained with the foreigners in New York who came back to Japan, was destroying everybody. And
I think at that time there was also sort of this illusion that he was, or not illusion, but there was this idea that he was like hadn't even hit his prime yet.
I think
it's kind of interesting because Naoki hasn't really been performing at that same level, so it's kind of interesting to see.
Really, I think that Naoki's gotten better.
He's gotten better, but he's been getting like his sister. He is just like a walking injury waiting to happen. I can't remember the last time that Naoki fought healthy.
That too as well. Yeah. Akimoto. I think they're gonna definitely put him on that match 2 card. Maybe 50, but I don't know. But I think he'll definitely be on match 2.
You gotta promote him. The guy's young. He's super young. You need to promote guys like this.
What do you think would be a good fight for him next, CJ?
Good fight for him.
Would you do 135 or 145? Because he's done both at this point so far.
I'd stay where he is. 145 would be probably worse for him.
Yeah,
I'm trying to look to see who I'd have him fight. I didn't even think about this. I
have some ideas because I think
they've got fighters. They have veterans that have him fight. I mean, do you either put him against another young guy, or you give him someone like Kuramoto or like Ota and see what happens?
I don't know. Put him against Kuramoto. Kuramoto could, we saw what Motoya could do to him. I don't know. Kuramoto, they could do 10 times. I'll do just a safe veteran, like a Yamaniha. Oh, actually, no, he already fought Yamaniha. I forgot about that.
I was gonna say that, but I already fought him. Yeah. And then I was gonna say Imanari just because I love Imanari and I'm always looking for
because you can just Imanari. You can sub it Imanari for.
I think a win over Imanari can kill your star power more than a loss to someone else.
Yeah. Imanari could be subbed in for anybody. and I'm fine with that fight.
Bring Takizawa back. Takizawa, we got to fight for you.
Oh yeah, well listen, he's the gate. He's a quintessential gatekeeper. That guy.
TikTok star.
TikTok dancing star. Yeah.
What about Kintaro? Kintaro, did they already fight?
Yeah, they did.
Fought. Oh, damn it.
Oh my god.
What about Rock Lee? Rock Lee.
You're going too far down.
I'm going too far down. That's the bottom. I'm thinking to scraping the bottom of the barrel for Akimoto.
Truth is, it would have been nice for him to get a win here, but like his story is just starting, And like the jury's out on him for a long time. We know that he has a ton of potential, and we know he is good. So there's no we can't say that he's a bust or whatever, but also we can't really come to that conclusion until a pretty long time from now. So I don't know. My takeaway from this was just this is a letdown, but whatever, I guess,
This is going to happen. It's better that it happened to him sooner than later. If he learns from it, it'll be good.
Rite of passage.
Yeah. So I'll ask, out of these 5 fights, did you guys have a favorite? I'll start with you, Jack.
I think the main event has to be the favorite, and that's not to say there was other bad fights in here. I think Satoshi had an impressive finish, and I think that there was a ton of drama in that Kyoji fight that made it interesting right until the very end. But that main event had the dramatics, it had the competitiveness, and it had that main event feel that I think it delivered. And it's I wrote that it's like an instant classic when it comes to New Year's Eve fights, just because of how the fight went.
How about you, CJ?
I'm going to agree with Jack once again. Very interesting conversation, but disagreeing with everything he says. No, but Satoshi and Izawa both got impressive finishes, but the fights were kind of one-sided. They happened very quickly. It's kind of hard to call that the best fight of the night.
Yeah.
So, and the Horiguchi win just kind of feels. Zulu looked good, but it feels kind of has that disappointing undertone. Whereas Koike and Suzuki has the history. Both of them performed very well. Even in defeat, Suzuki looks better than he did before. And I think it's a great fight. It kind of shows the Suzuki still has room to grow, but I believe after the fight, he mentioned he's actually going to go train with Kleber Koike after this. And so I expect to see his ground game improve and see what I'm excited to see how he looks coming back.
Did Kleber also say he's thinking about retiring soon? I thought I heard him say
that. I saw he and Suzuki talked backstage, and Suzuki's going to come teach him some striking, and he's going to teach Suzuki how to grapple more.
Okay. Aze Ray has a question. Is Black Belt Japan a decent fight team, or is their only prospect Taira? They're
a great fight team.
Is that Tsuruya he's thinking of?
Taira Tatsuda.
He's from Okinawa, I think, right?
Yeah, I believe he trains at Pyraistra, whatever the Okinawa location is called. But the Black Belt Japan used to be one of the Pyraistra network gyms.
Oh, it's so confusing.
And so they're part of the same network. And so he would go there to train with Raid Tsudaya. But the Black Belt Japan is where Ogikubo trains. It is where Raid Tsudaya trains. It's where Kana Asakura trains. It is where Shigeta Honoka trains. And it's where Karen trains. They just built and Valentina Shevchenko trained there as well.
Oh yes, she's the one who ruined. I think we can pinpoint when atomweight got ruined is when Shevchenko. I feel like ever since then, atomweight has gone down.
But back to Japan, they did build a new gym a couple years ago. They have an awesome facility, and it's a great gym.
This is the one that's in Chiba, or is this?
Yeah, it's in Kashiwa. It's kind of out there in that Chiba area, but it's great. I've watched them practice. They train hard. They've built a great women's team. They have a great men's team. You'll see them on a lot of Pancrase shows and a lot of deep shows.
It's also the place where Ogikubo told Shinryu to clean the toilets, and he refused as well. So, yeah. Jack, I know you gotta go, sir. So I would like to give you an opportunity to plug your stuff.
Yeah, well, first of all, great to be back. Thanks for the invite. Yeah,
Please come again. Don't be a stranger. We hope that you can do more stuff for Knockdown and here as well.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah, if you want to follow my work, knockdownnews.com is where I do a lot of reporting. I have a newsletter, knockdownnews.substack.com, free to sign up to 6 days per week of MMA news and reporting. No clickbait, just good facts and opinion and analysis. And you know, I'm around the place. Follow me on Twitter, Jack Wan and Jack WANNAN, and you know, I post when things happen. So
you're not writing that Sean O'Malley wants to fight in Rizin, so you've already your stalkers are already is better than like half the people out there.
I get the Andrew seal of approval. That
CJ, where can people see your stuff?
Well, I haven't been writing stuff as much as I used to, but I'm on Sogokaku. I'm trying to reformat, find a new way to kind of get news out. I like Jack's newsletter a lot, so I'm thinking of a way to rip that off without ripping it off. But yeah, see how that goes.
We can negotiate a little. Maybe slide me a check or two, and I'll tell my lawyers to ease off.
Since the yen is, I hope you like Monopoly money because the yen is not very strong.
But, I know that. I know that for a fact. I know that for a fact. Sorry, CJ.
And but just go to that. And I will also just, as always, I like watching. I cover a lot of the women's MMA stuff. So in closing, I'll say watch Chihiro Suzuki fight Bo Ming this weekend at One Championship. Chihiro Suzuki is one of the best prospects, and she's one of the main training partners of Seika Izawa. So there is a rising connection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really good prospect.
Big. What time is that show? Friday? Is that show Friday or is that Saturday?
The 11th, I believe.
Okay. Friday in America.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. And so you can join the Rizin Discord, Rizin FF. My buddy Jay Krish Gary has his stuff. His Twitter's at here, Jay Krish Gary, and his project is Focus Fights. Right down there. You can find all that stuff. And please follow the podcast right down there as well. And also like and subscribe if you are not. So please just do all that good stuff. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Jay Wolf. Please give Jay Wolf a follow. Everybody loves Jay Wolf, despite the crazy things he says sometimes. Yeah, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. Appreciate everybody who tuned in, and we'll see you soon for Rizin's. It'll be the Soccer Kick Awards, and then Rizin's first show of 2025. Take care, everybody.